Welcome to All the Feels Conversations. This podcast is a safe haven for emotions and feelings to be seen and shared. Here, we want to embrace all the feels, bringing us closer to ourselves and each other. This season, I'm having intimate, anonymous conversations with 100 men about their feelings. Why? Because society often tells men not to feel or express themselves, and this deeply affects our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being.
I'm an Afro-Indígena Maroon, which means I'm Puerto Rican Jamaican descent. So I honor those, but mostly Borinquen, speaking in Taino and Maroonage, because I'm a revolutionary, which ties into my work. I'm a somatica practitioner, a freedom fighter, MC, DJ, musician, all that stuff, pedagogue. And I'm Lenape territory, Staten Island, New York. That's where I'm at right now.
Are you religious at all, by the way?
Yeah. I consider myself more of a spiritualist. Try to not get too dogmatic with religion. However, I am crowned in a Yoruba Santeria, so I'm a priest of about 34 or so years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited about this conversation. Okay. So we're starting off with growing up.
hmm
Who do you think has most influenced the view of yourself?
The view of myself, definitely my
Mm.
mama. I was raised by my mom's, single mother. My father, I'm a love child. So my father,
What does that mean?
I was not supposed to be. I don't know if you
Oh.
know Diana Ross's Love Child song. That's a very fit description. Born out of yeah, pure love. My father was married to another woman out in Georgia, met my mother, and things got popping before poly was a thing. Another song that's fitting for him is Papa Was a Rolling Stone. So I got a soundtrack for my dad.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, he has a lot of children. I'm my mother's only child. So yeah, I grew up that particular way. I mean, it was love, but it was still definitely tough, which also led me to being in my spiritual praxis because in our belief, there was this idea that his wife was doing witchcraft or, some things that I wouldn't be born. And my mother was having a hard time with me in my early trimester stages, almost wasn't supposed to be. And my aunt, great aunt at the time, was a priestess, and she was doing ceremonies for my mother. And ever since I was in the belly, I've been doing ceremonies. And when I came out, I had to do the thing, So I was asked to partake in this particular journey. So yeah, I was crowned at about 11 years old, moving on for many reasons, but that was my introduction.
Wow. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you knew your message or the message from a very early age, would you say?
Not really. We just had a spiritual circle this past
Okay.
Sunday. We do one once a month since 2020, and we've been holding like these spiritual spaces where many denominations come, and we actually talked about that. One question was, how did you come to your understanding that something was greater than you? And
Mm.
for me, it took a long. My mother's there in that space, by the way. So we're sharing the space and talking, and I was laughing because my mother had a hard time for about 20 years trying to get me to be the spiritual person that I am today. It took a really long time. I was stubborn. I did not want to submit to that path. I was rebellious. I was being a teenager, like in my early 20s as well. I was like, I'm not doing this. This is too intense, So I was actually not into whatever was assigned for me for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in denial. So yeah, it took me a minute to actually fully embrace. I was still doing ceremonies, going to ceremonies, everything's done to me. But as far as practicing the way a priest should and doing the things, I wasn't really involved as I am now.
Okay. So then how would you describe your journey from boyhood to manhood?
In hindsight, lucky as hell, blessed. Like I'm surprised. I think everything they did to me worked because my family, I come from a family of, my mother addicted to various substances, many of
Mm,
my family members as well. My mother lost her parents when she was 4 years old. So, that stuff lingers on. She had like five brothers and sisters. So she had to kind of like, take care after a certain age. She was raised by my great grandmother, her grandmother. So, all the things that were done, a lot of all the young men ended up being older men and going in and out of prison. So, I grew up in the South Bronx and it was just normal for people to just get caught up in that life. So yeah, I mean, it could have went a different way many times, and thankfully it didn't. I had my run-ins with the law and all that, but it wasn't too crazy. So yeah, I think I'd say in general blessed and a lot of love, but it was rough. Like I grew up in the hood. So was it
mm,
especially during the time of Reaganomics. I was growing up in the 80s in the South Bronx. I'm 78. So yeah, that whole crack era,
mm,
that was me. Abandoned buildings, all the stuff that the old school, true school, hip hop
mm.
professors and talks about, that was definitely part of my life and our life growing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's stunned me a bit because I was just remembering some movies that I watched and some documentaries on the crack.
Yes.
Yeah, something on Netflix I watched recently, and
Mhm.
it seemed like a tough time to be living there as a young boy.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
intense, especially, I mean, obviously, like you're not really thinking about black or brown at that age. However, in the Bronx, it's a lot of, like I said, because I'm Puerto Rican Jamaican, there's a lot of mixture, and you can tell, the vibes. But during that time, you know how they say the lighter, the better in general when it comes to the law and all that. But where I was growing up, everybody was getting it. People kind of just knew you came from a certain neighborhood. It was more distinct. The police, people who were occupying the areas, were definitely, a lot of them weren't from our neighborhood. So it was easier for them to just be like, yeah, I don't care how light skinned you look, we're gonna rally you up as well. So yeah, I didn't get that black brown vibration until I started going upstate New York and being with other people and folks from like 8 on to being like, oh, okay, that's what lighter looks like. But my
wow.
family, because my family ranges, so I got like people who are as light as Marilyn Monroe to like as dark as, how the darkest you could put it. You know what I'm saying? I don't even like we just like we range. And I think it's because of that mixture. I didn't really like I didn't really think about racism like that, although we had jokes in our family. But yeah, my cousins was light as shit, man. They would like, I was like, okay, this is, and it was nothing. That's how I grew up. So, but then when I saw white as opposed to light, I was like, there's a big difference, features and all that. But I didn't get exposed to that so much later.
So, if you could speak to your younger self back then, what would you say to them about masculinity?
I'll be like, I don't know, man. We're gonna have to figure it out. We still trying to figure it out because in navigating this somatical world
Hmm.
and also coming from what I described, I have a lot of mixed feelings about masculinity, and I definitely, as a revolutionary, I profess to be a revolutionary matriarch, which denounces patriarchy, right? And uplifts women and also the roles of women. And I do believe in like a balance, of yin yang per se, right? Like we need the masculine, the feminine. Then I've been like inundated with a lot of just people talking about, toxic masculinity, which obviously there is. And then having good conversations with my sister about, well, there's toxic femininity and like so like
Mm,
what are these terms that we're defining and what does it mean? I mean, for me, I would definitely, the way I approach politics now is like avoiding isms. So,
mm,
the terms masculinity and all that stuff, I feel has been if I want to say right now, has been pretty divisive, and a lot of attention has been put towards that. And I think I would have had a conversation of just plain like, you'll be going through a rites of passage, right? Like, and you'll be going through things that other other people, not only of your particular gender or sexuality, but other people will not go through, you know. And I think that's the bigger conversation, right? Like to be white masculine versus black masculine versus indigenous masculine. Like there's so many different avenues for it. So to categorize it in one thing, yeah, I would look at my younger self and be like, yo, it's confusing as fuck out here. And don't get caught up in too many of the terms, but like be okay with feeling, as far as combating what the images are and how you should be. Definitely, I was raised by women, so for me, it was all right. Like they weren't like, yo, you can't be crying, blah blah. Although society was doing that, so I would definitely be like, yo, like allow yourself to be yourself, and whatever that means and whatever way that portrays. So yeah, my conversation of masculinity, yeah, I didn't even think of my father as being masculine. Like I didn't know those things until much, much later. I was just like, okay, everything was kind of fluid for me as far as the roles. A lot of people were switching roles and playing different roles in my life. So yeah, I would just, definitely when hanging out with the crew though, I would be a little bit more strict with myself and being like,
What do you
you
mean?
know, I'd be like, you don't need to, okay, you can play ball, whatever, that's cool. But the same crew that you playing ball with, you don't need to like go out and like carry stuff or try to get into trouble or like be a part of a little gang or posse, like, cause that's what all the boys were doing, all the young men. And we did it for survival mode, right? Like, cause if you was alone, you were pretty much a mark, you were a target, so it was important to be part of a crew. And unfortunately, because we were like raising each other, we're dumb as fuck. Like people were just saying stupid shit and telling people to do dumb shit. Like you're like, why are you pointing a gun at a dog? Like why are like why are you doing that? Like you're not gonna shoot the dog. You're exposing yourself. That's ridiculous. Like you're gonna get, like so like these particular things, I'd be like, be aware of those patterns of ill behavior that's bestowed on younger men trying to be older men or what they think is a man, right? Like getting into fights or being territorial, those particular things, I definitely would be like, yeah, ease up on that because that's not real masculinity. That's a mask of masculinity. That's something that people are just posturing and boistering to do. So I would have that conversation, but of course, it wouldn't even matter because I probably wouldn't listen to myself, like so I would like I ain't listen to my mother so much, so I was like, it'd be cool. I'd be like, all right, you look like me, you sound like you saying some shit, but I don't know, I'll figure it out myself. Just to be real, that's probably what happened.
So, the question was, what would you say to young stuff about masculinity? How would you should masculinity not be in that question? Would a better words give the answer that you were trying to give?
Yeah, I would say specifically, I would be more specific. I'll be like,
Okay.
for me, right, I would say to my younger self, like, how does it feel knowing and growing into being a young black man? And then even specifically saying, you know, a Borinquen or Maroon or Puerto Rican, Jamaican, right? Black man from the South Bronx. Like, because I think, like I was saying, like it's very specific to
Mm,
us. I think we we do these things, right? Like it's one thing to say black. And I'm just saying out like I like the question because I'm thinking about this is me thinking out loud because
mm,
breaking it down for me, it's one thing to be Puerto Rican on the island of Puerto Rico growing up in Loíza or versus growing up in San Juan, right? There's a real distinction between those particular Puerto Ricans and who's connected to what, their African roots, or who's denying their African, blah, blah. Same thing with somebody growing up in New York City. Like I had to assimilate so much where I wasn't trying to speak Spanish. You know, like I denounced that because I thought it sounded funny and nobody understood me. And the people who were lighter than me would make fun of me because I'm not speaking it correctly. The people who, you know, who didn't speak Spanish were looking at me like, what? Like, why are you speaking that? You know, so I would always just hide that.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's not only just being a black man, it was like, where's my other roots? And that's connected to my growing, right? Like, cause like my